Well, good morning. Let's see, we got some volume here. Can everybody, okay, there we go. All right. Well, this is the Full House Insurance Committee. We have 3 bills before us today. Before we get started, I'm going to call on Carolyn, if you would, Hughley, to voice invocation for us. And there you go.
Let us pray. O God, our help in ages past, our hope for years to come, we come this morning thanking you for brand new mercies that you have extended to us on today. We ask your guidance as we deliberate the issues before us. Give us the wisdom and the courage that we need to make decisions that will be reflective of you. In the name of Jesus, I pray. Amen.
Amen. All right. The first bill we're going to hear today is Senate Bill 109. That is sponsored by Senator Harbison. If you would please come to the table there, and I'll turn your mic on. We're looking at Senate Bill 109. Make sure we're working from the right LC. LC 461164S SCS. Is that the correct one?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Right. Well, very good. If you would, sir, go ahead and present.
Good morning, members of the chairman and committee. I certainly appreciate you hearing my bill this morning. The genesis of this bill, as probably the chairman was well aware of, started when a constituent contacted me about what he felt was an injustice being done to his family, who had suffered a myriad of accidents and situation that took his wife and his son in suicide as a result of the loss of his wife. Then his son, who was in the military, had an accident and it was fatal. It killed him. And he applied for his benefits, his premium. He had been paying his premium, and the company refused. And he contacted my office and said, look, very upset, crying as a matter of fact, very upset, and said they won't pay. And he just persisted and calling me several times till I said, let's look into it. So as a result, my office contacted the insurance commissioner, Commissioner King, and we started taking a look at it. And to be honest with you, the commissioner was very, very outraged by it. And as a consequence, we worked together, and this piece of legislation is a result of that. Hopefully, another person who serves our country will never have to go through this kind of thing again, or a family, especially one who had had such a tragedy visit their family consistently, with the loss of 3 people all at once in his family. So this is an effort to do that. Currently, law provides the delivery or issuance of any life insurance policy that contains a provision excluding or restricting liability for death caused in a certain specified manner or occurring while the insured has a specified status, like the military. But it does allow such policies to contain provisions excluding or restricting coverage under certain conditions. This current law does not apply to group life insurance. This bill, the version of it, prohibits group life insurance policies from being delivered or issued in the state of Georgia if the policy contains a provision that excludes or restricts liability for death occurring while the insured is an active duty service member of the regular or reserve component of the United States Armed Forces, and the death is not the result or indirectly of war, declared or undeclared, or any act or hazard of such war. As a former military member myself, and I'm sure you all, some of you all as well, I think we can appreciate the family being in that circumstance when that kind of tragedy strikes. So prayerfully, this will serve to at least alleviate that portion of it when they're going through such a bad situation.
All right. Thank you, sir. I will say that this bill should sound familiar to all of us. It's the same
sir.
bill that we passed out of committee
Yes, sir.
and to the House a few weeks ago, and it is a department bill. It comes as a request from the insurance commissioner. Is there anyone in the public that wishes to speak to the bill? I see no one wanting to speak to it. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Representative Hughley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Since this is my senator, I'd like to move do pass at the appropriate time.
So you want to be the one? Okay. All right. We have a motion do pass. We have a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Thank you, sir.
No, thank you, sir, for what you did as well. Appreciate it.
Not a problem.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, sir. Who is going, I will be the sponsor for that one for you, right? And do you have anything you need me to sign, sir?
No, you good to go.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you. All right. That's Senate Bill 109. The second bill that we'll be dealing with is Senate Bill 121. This is sponsored by Senator Harbin. We will be working from, this is Senate Bill 121. We'll be working from LC 461181S SCS. Is that correct?
That is correct. 1181S, correct?
Very good. Thank you, sir.
Very good. Very good. Thank you,
You
Mr.
would-
Chairman,
Go ahead.
members of the committee. Good to see you this morning. This bill has to do with insurance limits that are required by Georgia law. Currently, our limits have not been increased for 14 years. So we are currently at a level, and it's very similar to what's going on around some of the other states. This particular bill has to do with those people who are convicted and charged with DUIs, and they've been charged with that. DUIs are up from 2019, up 43%. And we're not only seeing that with alcohol, but we're seeing that with other drugs that are involved in accidents from that standpoint. What this bill will do is if someone is convicted, their first DUI, they are required to increase their limits to 50, 100, 50. You have a sheet in your file, excuse me, in your folder that kind of shows the progression where we are currently. When you look at where we are today, damages, for instance, in property damage, current state minimums are $25,000. I would dare say that most of the cars that we drive are worth more than the $25,000 that are there. When you think about the medical, you've got $25,000 per person and $50,000 per accident. That really doesn't cover a lot of the medical, to be candid with you, in so many places. And that's why, as an insurance agent, I encourage my clients to look at increasing their underinsured or uninsured motorist. One of the things that, as I look at the states around us, everybody pretty much holds the same as keeping the minimum. They do have to file an SR-22. What happens is their license is pulled once convicted. They have to file the SR-22 with the state that they have insurance for 6 months, and they have to renew that every 6 months, that is paid in full, so that they have evidence. What this bill would do on the first offense, they would have to go to 50, 100, 50. They'd have to buy that limit, and that would be the limit that they're required to keep. If they have a second conviction, they would go to 100, 300, 100. Currently, Florida, on first offense, since 2007, has had their limit at 100, 300, 50. So it's not something totally out of the norm that Florida is already doing. They're required to keep those limits for 3 years, which is the same limit or the same time period as the other states around us, and also for the filing that they have to file with the SR-22 is in place. It would only take place when there's a guilty verdict, they plead, or however, as far as that portion. They also have to keep proof of their insurance in their car, or either electronically or by paper, so that we know that they have insurance. What I see is, for one situation that I've been involved with, is that this person had two DUIs, was driving with a suspended license, and had basic limits. The two cars that were involved in the accident far exceeded his limit of $25,000, and the medical far exceeded the limits that were there in his policy. Here's what happens as a general rule. When you get a DUI, if you're not involved in an accident, your insurance company, unless they're running MVRs, doesn't know about it. But when you have an accident, they know about it, or we do, at the state level do. Therefore, that's what would trigger this from a standpoint of having to increase that notification. I think this is that futuristically, this is a step forward, but what we're seeing today is that with inflation, if you think about 14 years ago where $25,000 is, we need to look even at this just because of the DUI issue, but futuristically, maybe we need to look at even our limits. Are they adequate for what we're dealing with? Because if the other party that's at fault does not pay, you end up having to pay from that standpoint. And I just think it's a good protection for the citizens of Georgia in that respect.
All right, let's see. We have a few questions.
Okay, dope.
Representative Hawkins?
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
Senator Harbin, I've got a question for you. On the first offense, why don't we raise that 50 to 100? I mean, these Jeep Cherokees now are $89,000. I mean, it's, is there a reason why you didn't go to 100 on the property damage?
I got a little bit of pushback from my own side, and they said, well, why don't you do an in-between and come back and look at it again? I'm just being candid, because mine was to follow Florida, because I thought that Florida, with their stance, was a pretty good move. And I actually pulled rates for our committee so they could look at it. So this was a compromise to get the bill across the line. So that's where I am on it. I agree with you, is that what we're seeing today, I did not realize this, I don't know if you do, electric cars are almost always twice as more expensive to repair as a regular car. And I stand amazed because of all the sensors and everything going on. So we are seeing that need, as you mentioned, $79,000 for a Jeep. Is it Cherokee?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And up to 100 for some
Yes,
of those
sir.
things.
Yes, sir.
So we're going to leave that person $35,000, $50,000 short if he's been totaled. Electric cars are sort of like the solar lights. When they don't work, you just throw them away, right? Okay,
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Representative Tarvin?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Did you say if you get a DUI, the insurance company doesn't know about it, or?
If you get a ticket, now most of your companies, some of them do random the MVRs, motor vehicle reports. But if you don't have an accident, let's say you just go to a checkpoint, that doesn't necessarily key the insurance company to know about that. The issue that we had, this guy had 2 DUIs, was driving with a suspended license, and he still had insurance in place because of that.
Let me say, I've never gotten a DUI, but I've gotten a super speeder, and they know about it pretty quick on that. And I barely get out of and when I get a ticket going home from here, I don't tell them I'm a state representative. You can't give me one. I just take the ticket and go on. It's almost like, and I know this is an oxymoron, really, but if we're allowing them to drive, and I agree that our limits are too low anyway, but by doing this, all of a sudden, we ain't got any trial lawyers in here, I know. All of a sudden, you knew they were more dangerous, and you charged them more, but you let them drive anyway. So just some of the things that we might have some unintended consequences in the future, but you can't get around all of those. I agree with the premise of what you're trying to do, and I'm surprised if you got a second DUI, you could still drive. But thank you for bringing the bill.
Okay. Yeah.
Representative Reeves?
Senator Harbison, a couple of questions.
No, that was the first
I'm
one.
sorry,
We
Harbison,
look alike, though. You got to
Harbin,
get that down now.
I have
We
not
get
had-
mixed up all the time in
I
the
have
Senate.
not had that second cup of coffee, so take it as a compliment.
It is.
Certainly DUI is something we all care about. Anything we can do good on that definitely is a good thing. But some questions. So is this a perpetual lifetime thing? Once you have it once, 20 years later, you're still stuck with this, or is there any way to do a duration?
It's a 3-year. It's
3 years.
a 3-year period that's in the bill, and that's what's required for your evidence to the state. if you are currently. Line 36 is there's a period of 33 years that's there.
3 years. I
3
see
years.
that now. Okay. State Farm, the other auto insurance companies, people who do personal injury, have they all looked at this and are
They've
okay with it?
looked at it. They know that it's there. I would tell you if they knew about it, more than likely that you would not be their client too very long, and you would go to other markets as far as that. And there are markets that write insurance for people who have problems in that respect. So the limits are available. In fact, in committee, I pulled a sample of what it would cost someone in Fulton County who had a DUI, what it would cost him to go to the various limits, just so they would know what that was going to cost them.
What is the differential?
Differential, 1 second. If you go from for instance, after a DUI, this is doing a 6-month full coverage on a Honda Accord in Fulton County, so that's there. The clean record was 2248. DUI is 3406. That's for basic limits. If he goes to the next limit for the first DUI, it's it would be 2420. So there's not a lot of difference there because he has a clean record. But if he has a DUI, it goes to $4,040. So about $600 or so to increase it upward. Thinking about this too, normally what we see in the courts, the court charges a fine or a fee. That goes to the courts. That does not protect the general public. I would be in favor of lower court fees and requiring higher limits because that protects the general public. I think that's really what we're about from that standpoint.
So it would be about a 50% increase on the first offense and nearly double on the second offense.
The first offense would be from 2248 clean record, DUI 2420. So in that $200. In a DUI situation, 3406 is the premium for DUI base limits, but for the first level would go $4,040, so about $600 that every 6 months that individual's going to pay for the higher limits that he's got. And this is just a sample because that also includes full coverage on the vehicle that could be a liability only that would lower that cost, but just to give somebody that, that range of what it's going to cost them.
Mr. Chairman, if I could ask follow up. All right, I'll ask it a little bit clearer.
Okay.
We've heard a lot this year about insurance and insurance going up and people getting uninsured through insurance going up and all that kind of stuff and insurers leaving. Are the car insurance companies okay with this? Have they looked at it and said we're okay with this?
What I've seen, there's been no pushback because here's what's happening. Even when there is a claim, if they have base limits and it is in excess of that, they have to pay through the uninsured or underinsured motorist coverage. They still have to pay back from the insurance policy. So if you're hit by that driver and he only has $25,000 and your car's $50,000, your insurance is going to pay $25,000. So I say it's a swapping of dollars, if you will, as long as they're insured. And to the insured, then whoever did the damage is paying for the damage rather than you not paying for the damage, if you will.
Okay. And do any neighboring states do this?
As I mentioned, everybody else does it except Florida. Florida in 2007, I have a copy of their law, went to 100, 350, and it's been in place since 2007.
Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Representative Hughley?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My first question has to do with your example, because isn't it true it would depend on whether you're talking about a male or female, how old that person is, what that rate would be.
Correct.
So there is no standard rate for somebody that does not have any accidents. There are a lot of factors involved in that. And if you're talking about an 18-year-old, it's going to be way more than if you're talking about a 50-year-old. So I don't want us to get married to those rates that he gave.
No, you're absolutely correct. I tell young males, what can I do about my insurance? I said, get married and have children. They didn't like that option from that standpoint. But this was a single male, 27 years old. We were just trying to give an idea of what it would cost someone, because here's what I see, and if you look at across the state and across other states, the fees in the courts, that money goes to the courts, and there's no protection to the general public. By raising that limit, we are protecting the general public, if you will, and I actually would be in favor of lower fees to the courts and let them use that money to buy insurance. Our saying within our industry sometimes is that if you take all of a man's money, he can't buy alcohol nor gas, and he becomes a good driver because he can't go anywhere.
Well, the other question I have is, what happens if the person who has the DUI is driving my car, and my car only has a 25, 50, 25? So what happens there?
Your coverage is primary on your car. If you give someone permission to drive your car, your car is primary. Their liability is going to be excess over your coverage.
I'm assuming that this person doesn't have any insurance because he got a DUI, so he doesn't have a car.
Okay.
I let him drive to the store.
Correct.
So what happens?
Your limits are your limits.
I know, but this bill will say he has to have those limits. So the person who owns the car would not be a party to this.
Yeah, let me give you this.
Is that what you're saying?
If a person does not own a car and wants to maintain their license, they will have to buy what's called a non-owned policy for the driver to be in compliance with this. Because if you don't have a car, you can still have a license, but you have to carry insurance for that purpose. We don't see that a lot, but that's what would be required from that standpoint. He would have to have coverage that would cover him for anything he drives. Your coverage still is going to be primary. His coverage would be excess over whatever limits that you carry.
That's what I was getting to, that this would extend to whether or not a person owned a car.
Correct.
Okay.
Because we're talking about the driver.
Yes.
Representative Williamson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Chairman Harmon. I have the utmost respect for you, and as you and I've discussed before, I was in the insurance business, but I've been out for a long time. You've already answered one question I had. So they're still using SR-22 filings when there's DUI is involved, and this would just be an adjustment to that same system, the SR-22 filings. So there's no cost to implement this higher limits.
No, it would just be a limit change. They do have to file the SR-22 to get their license reinstated because it's removed, and they have to file for that, and the insurance companies have to file for that. All we're going to do is change the limit amount that's required.
I've got a couple of other questions. So as far as I don't disagree with you about the court costs, because you see billboards and ads. I think public safety commercials say, upwards of $10,000 for a DUI. A 27-year-old driver is really behind. Number one, they're a dum-dum for getting a DUI, but now they've got all this other piled on them, and this is going to be one more economic disadvantage to them. So I don't have any problem with the idea of shifting some of this cost away from the courts and towards this. But I do worry about, as our great friend and former colleague in the House, Penny Houston, said, I'm a little bit worried about tacking it on. You remember that? Y'all remember that? Yeah. And I'm saying that in all seriousness because this is an enormous amount of money from a 27-year-old young person's that's already not making wise decisions, but they're probably not making a lot of money. If we had a mechanism to shift some of the, if they do this, then statutorily it'd be lower court fees or something, if I'm making sense. So really that's the only comment I was going to make.
All right. Representative Davis?
Thank you, Chairman. My question is this. I was thinking about the speed cameras going through the school zones and people not having due process because whoever was driving the car, even though they're the one that did the speeding, it is the person who owns the car that pays the price. This is not like that, right?
No, this is specifically to the driver, and also where the speed camera is a civil penalty. From that standpoint, you're correct. That's a sensitive area with me. I don't know that is a just process, in my opinion. So you are very wise in that respect.
And also, I was thinking when I was reading this, that really is pretty good idea. And I was curious, because when you smoke, you pay more in your health insurance. Yep. So would you view this as a form of deterrent? Well, I mean, people should know automatically if you're drinking and driving, you're not going to be driving long. But I'm looking at this, and I'm trying to figure out why we didn't do it earlier.
The representative knows from what she speaks, and she's very wise. But I think this is where is this. Somebody's going to pay for it. It's either going to be the person who is hit or the person who was driving the car that was under the influence.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
I think Representative Williamson had a follow-up.
Yeah, and thank you, Representative Davis, for putting this thought in my mind about enforcement. What is the enforcement mechanism if they fail to follow this law? What's the penalty under the law?
That would be up to the judge, because he can actually suspend their license, completely, or limit their license, as I understand it. When I say that, they can only drive from home to work. There can be that, and he can actually, I believe, put the, and don't know how many attorneys we have here, they can put the breath device on the car, right, and they can do some other things on the GPS. That is a court issue, as I understand, with the judge.
And Representative Hawkins.
Yeah, in this bill, really more about helping the wreckee when the wrecker hits him, and that's what I see here. That's what you're trying to do, which is a good thing.
I like the smoker versus non-smoker. If you don't smoke, you pay less. If you smoke, you pay more.
Yeah.
I like your example. I may use that if you don't mind.
Yeah, I think it's a good bill. Thank you.
All right. And this is a public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak? I would hear from the insurance world if they're out there and would like to make any comments. Please come to the podium. Give us your name. And
yes, sir. So Bobby Pollard, I speak on behalf of State Farm Insurance Company, but really we were dealing with this on the Senate side, and somebody was volunteered by somebody else to speak on behalf of the insurance industry, and I was that volunteer. We did not oppose this bill, and Representative Reeves, when you indicated the auto insurers okay with this, there's nobody really that speaks for the auto insurers as a whole. I know there's another whole discussion going on about insurance in this capital, and it's as if there's all insurance in one building in New York City. And of course, it doesn't work that way. There's all kinds of different insurance and different lines. We did express some concerns. I expressed some concerns on behalf of the group. On the Senate side, I compliment Senator Harbin. He listened to all of that. The bill has changed. At that point, it had the higher limits in it for the one DUI. It had a 4-year run as opposed to a 3-year run. He adjusted that and made it a graduated position for that. The fundamental policy concern raised, and it's been raised here today, is can that person afford it? And it's not really the penalty for that for the whether it's 27-year-old or the 18-year-old or the 50-year-old with the DUI. It's the ripple effect, and if they do not do that, do they simply move over to the uninsured category and still drive? There's, we check that periodically and have over the years, and there's a percentage of uninsured drivers. Of course, that's why we have uninsured and underinsured motorist coverage in the first place. But that continues, is perpetual. It changed some with the GEEC system, Georgia Electronic Insurance Compliance System, that helped with that. But there's still that number. And whether or not the 50,000 or 100,000 is the right number on the physical damage or any other, the policy question is, do you move from that to zero coverage because that person just doesn't buy it and violates the law? That happens. So those were the policy concerns raised, and I just rise because the question had come up from the insurance industry, and I didn't want to sit altogether silent, but also wanted to indicate that Senator Harbin had worked with us or listened to the concerns and adjusted his bill, and I appreciate that. There will be, I think, regardless of the number, there will be some access to coverage by some insurers. It's likely not going to be State Farm. Representative Hughley can speak to that certainly more than I can. But there are a variety of other insurers that specialize in that market. It costs a lot more, and it may be a non-standard carrier, but there will be availability. Obviously, as the higher the number goes up, the more challenging it will be for the policyholder, the prospective policyholder, and then for the insurer.
So we have some questions for you.
Yes, sir.
Representative Reeves.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Potter, there was a question about enforcement earlier, and I know if you get stopped and you don't have insurance, you get a ticket. Is this keyed to that so that if a DUI person gets pulled over and they haven't increased their limits, they would get a ticket for not having insurance? Is this keyed into that?
I'd have to refer to Senator Harbin on that. I don't know that it is, but he may can answer that better than I can.
If you look at line 47 and 48 under the code section 33-7-16, shall keep proof or evidence of such coverage during the operation of the motor vehicle, and it can be in a paper or an electronic form.
So if they ignore this and they just stay at 25 and 50 and they get pulled over, they could get cited, it sounds like, under
Correct, because they would have evidence.
Enforcement.
Yeah.
And then the other question, how old are our limits? The 25 and 50, that's the base. How long has that been in place?
Well, so the answer I heard from the other side of the room was forever. I think it was just short of the Old Testament, but I think Senator Harbin said 14 years. It's been a while. It has been a while, and I hear it a fair amount that we need to do this because, as Representative Hawkins said, the price of vehicles has gone up. The catch of that, of course, is every time we look at that, Georgia is generally in the middle of the 50 states. There are some actually that are lower in minimum limits. There are certainly some that are higher. But if that occurs, then the price goes up. And that whole other discussion that's going on around the Capitol, a part of that discussion is the cost of insurance. It certainly gets conflated as to what that really means. Is it health insurance? Is it auto? Is it premises liability? We just hear insurance, and it's not exactly that. But on this line item, if it's raised, the cost is going to go up. It's not going to double, but it would go up.
Representative Hawkins.
Bobby, this is just a general question. If, say, I do have a Jeep wagon there and this first offense guy hits me, he's going to pay $50, then I've got to pay $50. Do my rates go up after my $50?
And I may, it may be unfair, I may defer to Representative Hughley about that, but I expect there would be some concern from you that your insurance is paying, and there would be the possibility that your rate would go up.
That's what I thought. Even though I'm not at fault, my rate would go up because I made a claim.
I can't declare that, but I'd say it could. And you may have a better answer to that. But I wouldn't say that it would.
That's the reason I said 100, because
But-
it's not
but-
fair to
Right.
the innocent.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Right.
we are where we are.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And from a policy standpoint, I would remind again, maybe they do have 50. If they don't have 50, then it's even more of a concern. And if by this policy you move them into the uninsureds, it would be a concern. And I would touch on the one item about where Representative Reeves was, and do you know about the coverage? Representative Hughley raised that point that it may be that she or somebody loaned the car to someone else, and that would complicate that issue as well.
Thank you.
All right, I don't see any other questions. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Is there anyone else in the audience that wishes to speak to it? All right. Seeing no one, I guess we are at the, any other questions, discussions from the body? Hearing none, I guess we're at a point of, making a motion?
Move to pass.
We have a do pass. Do I hear a second? Do pass and second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. All right. Your bill passes.
Thank
you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Could I ask this? Would you be willing to handle this in the House, since you have a law background and an insurance relationship?
Okay. All right.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Nice. That was an okay. 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 All right. Next, we have Senate Bill 276. Senator Eccles, I believe you're up. You would please. You are presenting Senate Bill 276. The LC number is 520780. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Very good, then.
Yes, sir. Just
All right.
appreciate you having me and dealing with me being just a few minutes late this morning, Mr. Chairman.
Well, we tried to carry on a long discussion to make sure you had plenty of time to get here.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Please go ahead.
Good morning, committee members. Appreciate y'all being here bright and early this morning. So Senate Bill 276, what it does is it's an agency bill from the Department of Community Health passed last year in the Senate, and then maybe on sine die got hung up a little bit. But I kind of need to get this across the finish line for DCH and for the taxpayers really in Georgia. So what it does, it brings us into compliance with federal requirements of the U.S. Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2022. And what that does, it requires us to have laws in the state that bar third-party payers from refusing payment on health care issues. And basically, in a nutshell, what they're doing is making Medicaid the primary payer, and the health insurers end up being, they try to not pay and make Medicaid the front payer. That's not how this is supposed to work. They're supposed to pay first, and Medicaid be the last payer, the payer of last resort. It can be a commercial insurance plan, it can be a lawsuit settlement, or even a workers' compensation settlement. It'll ensure that these primary payment sources cannot unreasonably deny payment. And really, at its core, it's going to help uphold the integrity of the Medicaid program. It's going to increase revenue to the program as payment by primary sources are unable to be denied based on a requirement from prior authorization. So I'd be happy to answer any questions, and I've got Miss Brandy Sylvan with me as well, because I'm not the total expert on it, but I'm learning.
All right. We do have a few questions. Representative Hawkins.
Randy, you probably sit where you are. This is pretty straightforward. This actually, CMS covers Medicaid and Medicare, and if you have insurance by federal law, that is a primary cover. Since we don't have state Medicare, then we're aimed at state Medicaid, but it does affect both, and I think this is a very good bill, Senator.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman Hawkins.
Representative Douglas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To the author, would this be a mental effect to this bill?
Mental effect? It's wearing on my mentality a little bit. This is my first committee over here on the House side, so I'm a little bit nervous about that.
Mental and mental.
What?
Mental. Mental.
Mental health?
Small. Not mental. Mental.
M-I-N.
Yes.
It's a big deal. I think this is, I think any bill that we're bringing before a committee is a big deal because it's affecting Georgians.
Thank you. Very good.
Representative Hughley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm trying to make sure that I understand that what has been happening in this marketplace. So is it, you're saying that the insurer cannot refuse to pay just because they did not have prior authorization? If the service has been rendered, then they have to pay. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, ma'am. So I'm Brandy Sylvan, Director of Government Relations with the Department of Community Health. And yes, ma'am, you are correct. This is just clarifying that if there is a primary payer source that is responsible for payment of services that Medicaid has already rendered, they can't deny that reimbursement back to Medicaid because we did not require a prior authorization when they would have for that service.
Okay. All right.
Representative Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is this: what is the penalty? I mean, if this is something that is to align with federal law, if the people continue to do it, what is the penalty?
So the risk of not passing this bill is that we as the state Medicaid agency need to be in compliance with those federal rules and regs, and if we're ever out of compliance with that, we are at risk of those funds being held up. So it's really just making sure we're in compliance with the directive that was passed down.
Well, may I have a follow-up?
Follow-up, yes.
What I'm saying is, what if the third parties continue to not even abide by the new law once we pass this?
I would need to follow up with you on that, but I mean, this is something that, you know, and honestly, I don't know how prevalent the issue is.
Okay.
But it's just something that we're wanting to make sure, like I said, the integrity of that program is upheld.
Thank you.
Representative Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There were a couple things in it that I think needed clarifying. I know they refer to the type of treatment or whatever as medical assistance, so I'm kind of would like an explanation of what your definition is. Is this any services that are covered under Medicaid? And I don't see Medicaid actually written in here.
I'm sorry, what line are we looking
Well,
at?
I'm looking at line 40, but it's in there several times.
So in general, the Medicaid program is referred to as medical assistance programs because it's not just Medicaid. It's also Peach Care for Kids. It's our waiver programs. So those are kind of collectively referred to as medical assistance.
Okay, and in the context of this bill, I'm looking for a particular treatment that might have been rendered. And the first thing that came to my mind, if someone goes and gets Ozempic, and then it ends up that they're not diabetic, and it wouldn't be covered unless it's, if it had been pre-certified, they would have known before they purchased it. Is the plan going to be expected to pay for it because it's not covered if they were getting it for obesity and not? I just don't want a patient to be confused.
I understand. And I think, so I'm trying to think of a situation kind of like what you're describing. And in that case, the primary payer could potentially be if you're on a commercial insurance plan as well. And Medicaid is always the payer of last resort. So if your commercial plan did not offer that coverage, but it was a covered benefit in your Medicaid plan, then yes, Medicaid would be the payer on that. But we're talking about, let's say there was a Medicaid member in a car accident and Medicaid paid for services of, you know, treatment after that car accident, and then there is a settlement. We're really making sure that we can reclaim those funds from the lawsuit settlement without any concerns about, well, we think you should have gotten a prior authorization on this.
Okay, and Medicaid needs to get the money that they can, anything back, so that it's a good thing. May I have a follow-up?
Follow-up.
Okay, and it would be following up with the department, and I was kind of community health department. It seems like it's an insurance issue, and again, I'm looking for who's going to pay the price for not having done it correctly. Would it be reported to the commissioner and put the carrier in some type of jeopardy? That's kind of what I was looking for. Where would be the standard for that? And we've got reports to file. It indicated filing reports to the department and not to the insurance, and that's what I was looking for.
And I'm certainly happy to follow up with our third-party liability team to find out what the penalty is for not complying with this. That's all existing language, so really we're just trying to address that prior authorization piece. But I'll be happy to find out.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So you sort of brought me into more focus when you mentioned this example of an automobile accident. So basically, you are talking about subrogation possibilities for the department to get back money that it could be from uninsured motorist coverage. It could be from direct, the other party was liable and you get it under their bodily injury coverage. So is that a problem we've had, the department's had, is
So again, I don't
subrogation
know
claims?
that it's as a prevalent issue, but it is something that CMS has told all states they need to get this into their state statute. So it may be that on a federal level, it happens enough that it is impacting, the budget. But I'm not aware of this necessarily being a prevalent issue, but it is something that we want to make sure we're
So
in
we're just
compliance
buttoning
with.
it up. Okay.
If I might add, about the compliance with the things, like it or not, the things going on up in Washington, D.C., I feel like it's better for us to be compliant with their mandates, so we don't have to worry about, are they going to send their money, reimburse Medicaid.
Representative Hawkins.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're right on track. I guess I got a question as a patient. I always try to look at legislation, and even in our committee, every time something comes in, is what if I'm the patient? What happens to the patient? So the patient in this part is Medicaid, low income, but does have a job with some insurance. That's what we've got. So what happens to the bill if the insurance company says, no, we're just not going to do this? Is the patient then liable for the unpaid balance in this scenario?
So a Medicaid member, that is part of our provider contracts.
You can't.
Is that cannot be sought by the provider from the patient themselves.
Right, so the provider's then stuck.
But
Yeah.
again, I would need to, but it may be that Medicaid has already paid it out. And it's that the state has now paid for something that there was another entity that should have been making that payment.
Okay. Thanks.
Yes, sir.
Representative Tarvin.
Yeah, I apologize, but when y'all say stuff, old brains kick in. How many people have primary insurance that have Medicaid?
So, and I don't think that's a large percentage of what we're talking about. I think we are talking more commonly about, lawsuit settlements and workers' comp settlements.
Okay.
But in a situation like that, you might have an adult child that's still on their parents' plan, but they also have their own Medicaid plan independently. But, there are situations where you might have both.
The next thing has nothing to do with it, but I got to know. When did Medicare? Medicare was, if you had Medicare, it was primary. About 1996, or when was that we went from Medicare being primary and to your private insurance being primary? Does anybody know that? Was that 96, or when did that happen? Does anybody know?
I don't know the answer to that.
But it's now secondary. If you've got other insurance, it's always secondary, no matter your age. Thank you very much.
Oh, for Medicare, I'm not certain on the Medicare rules, so, because that's an entirely federal program, so I wouldn't be able to.
Oh, I'm sorry. I
effectively-
thought this bill was mentioned. Medicare was mentioned here today.
So the federal entity that is issuing this directive is the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. That's collectively their CMS, but this is directed at the Medicaid program.
All right. Any other questions? Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak to the bill? I see no one. I think we're at a point of what's the will of the committee?
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. You have your bill, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. And that concludes our business for today. We are adjourned.
Thank you, Senator.
We almost there now.
Yeah.